Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, as counties across the state grapple with exploding jail populations, some state lawmakers are looking at ways to give them relief. They're proposing changes that include directing more funding to counties and sending some felons back to prisons. But in part one of a two-part reporting series, Barbara Brosier explains why some worry those are temporary fixes to a larger incarceration crisis.
Danica Kennedy has been at the Hancock County Jail for nearly a month.
Trying to shower sometimes can be a problem. Just a number of things that can come with the overcrowding.
She's housed in a cell block that's so full, several women are sleeping on bunk beds in the common area. The constant commotion makes it hard to stay focused. Even the smallest of problems can escalate into fights.
You know, you have people who get upset because it's a line in the shower, it's razor day, and somebody jumps in front of them, and people are pretty quick to fight about, things like that. It can wear on you, like I said, and a lot of people can't handle it.
On this particular day, there are 211 people in a jail meant to house fewer than 160. That doesn't include the 70 inmates Hancock County is paying other counties to house.
Last year we spent almost $600,000 sending other inmates to other counties.
The problem extends well beyond this small jail. A 2018 report from the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute shows 77% of the state's jails were at or over capacity. Police and prosecutors across the state will tell you the reasons are multifaceted. They blame the opioid epidemic for an uptick in drug offenses and violent crime. And criminal code reform legislators passed a few years ago means level 6 felons are taking up valuable space in their facilities instead of serving their sentences in prison.
I believe that we, as the state of Indiana, change the criminal code, have played a big part in the jail overcrowding, and I think we should resolve it.
Representative Randy Fry wants to ease the burden criminal code reform placed on local jails by letting counties request the Department of Correction take in convicted level 6 felons if their facility is at capacity. The DOC would house those inmates at shuttered prisons it still owns in the state, which would become regional holding facilities.
There's no funding in the bill for additional revenue to DOC. So the way we fund it now is that the $35 a day per diem that the county gets when they have a prisoner is then transferred to Department of Corrections while they have the prisoner. And so therein offsets that additional cost to DOC.
Critics argue the bill won't alleviate Indiana's increasing incarcerated population. It will just shift the problem from one jurisdiction to another. Another proposal would keep level 6 felons in jails, but increase the reimbursement rate the state pays counties for housing them. But research from the Vera Institute for Justice, a nonprofit that aims to reduce mass incarceration, illustrates a bigger problem. It shows Indiana is an outlier when it comes to its jail population.
We're in this moment that's often talked about as sort of the reversal of mass incarceration. Indiana, in many ways, has been moving or staying in the opposite direction.
Heiss says no other state has increased its jail population so dramatically in the past decade. Dozens of Indiana counties are considering building new jails as a result.
Have you looked at any budget cuts?
In Hancock County, some residents expressed concerns during a public hearing this week about a proposed new jail. County leaders say they need a facility with triple the number of current beds to meet state and federal requirements.
To allow for staff to be more safe, to allow inmates to be safer in our facility, this is something we have to do.
But voters here rejected a request in May to fund the project through a property tax increase. Now the county council wants to raise local income taxes by 0.2%. A few residents question if that's the best solution in a place some jokingly call Handcuff County.
There's also other alternatives as well. For instance, rehabilitation for people who are capable of being rehabilitated, restitution to the victims of crime. Instead of just locking them up in the local jail, make them do something useful.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Barbara Brosier.
State Representative Matt Pierce, a Democrat from Bloomington, has worked for reform in the criminal justice system. He wants the state to move away from warehousing prisoners toward a model that emphasizes treatment for addiction and mental health. Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So we saw in that story 77% of jails in the state are at or over capacity. Maybe just come from a lawmaker's perspective, how did it get to that level?
Well, it's been a long time building process, and part of the problem I see is people are kind of blaming that on the criminal code reform, where we told the counties you need to keep the low-level nonviolent felons at home, not to warehouse them in jail, but to get them in the mental health and addiction programs that are proven to be much more effective and keep them from coming back and committing more crimes. And so one area that you really want to focus on if you want to lower overcrowding in county jails are the number of people in jail awaiting trial. We did a study in 2017 in the Corrections and Criminal Code Study Committee and found that if you just let out half of the people who are in jail just awaiting trial, that you would only have 13 counties with overcrowded prisons. So that's where the focus really needs to be, is how do we use evidence-based best practices to ensure we're only keeping people in jail before trial that are actually a danger to society.
So one bill we looked at would create regional holding facilities. Now this is for convicted level 6 felons. Now do you see that? First of all, how would that work, and do you see that helping at all?
Well, Representative Fry has a proposal that would essentially say if your county jail hit capacity, you could offload some of the level 6 felons, the low-level felons that are being held in your county jail until your population went down, and then you would take them back. The problem is the level 6 felons are really not the issue, and that would require the state to put resources into creating the central holding facility. What needs to happen is, instead of counties spending millions and millions of dollars building new jails, or the state creating new holding facilities, we need to be building treatment facilities, mental health facilities that get at the underlying cause of what's actually causing people to be ensnared in the criminal justice system. Otherwise, we're just treating the symptoms.
So you talk about treating the symptoms. Does there need to be maybe a bigger approach or comprehensive look at all of this too at the same time? Is that happening?
The thing that's frustrating to me is when we did criminal code reform, that was a 4 or 5 year process. We got rid of mandatory minimum sentences. We recognized that the addictions and mental health were really driving the prison population, and we've now test piloted the programs that actually provide the treatment and get at the underlying causes. And if we would just follow through and expand that statewide to all counties instead of being in pilot counties, we would have the problem solved.
We have to end it there. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And in part 2 of our series next week, we'll take a look at what jail overcrowding means for inmates suffering from mental illness.